Welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing. I'm Tony Haggerty, Haggerty10 Twitter handle, and I'm joined today by Alison McConnell. How are you, Alison?
Very well, thank you, Tony.
Nice one. Now, because you were missing yesterday, Alison, we'll just touch upon it briefly. What was your thoughts on Sunday's 1-0 win over Motherwell? Another crucial 3 points for Celtic?
Yeah, to be honest, I think at the minute for Celtic it's about points. I don't think anything else really matters getting through December. It's about ensuring there are wins on the board. I think when you look at the squad and how bereft it is of key personnel, they're missing Jota, they're missing Kyogo, James Forrest went off, Giakoumakis has been out. I think the fact they're playing just now without a recognised striker, I think it's about taking the wins and moving on to the next game. I think that's all that really matters at the minute.
Well, that next game is Ross County tomorrow night in Dingwall, Alison. And again, probably Celtic will come up against a team that will be, dependent on defence, and Celtic will have to break them down again. What's your thoughts on that? Can they go to Dingwall and keep that winning run going?
I think they need to. I think that has to be the focus. I think we've spoken about it previously and regularly about the fact that the gap at the top means there's no safety net for Celtic. They really can't afford to further slip up. So I think absolutely the intention will be going there to win. I think it'll be difficult. I don't think it'll be an easy game for Celtic. I think could be quite stodgy. I agree with you. I think the onus will be in Celtic to break down Ross County, and I think if you look at the way Ross County have played in recent weeks, they've just got into the game in the back of that massive win over Dundee. All of a sudden they've dragged other clubs round about them into the relegation mire. It's a free hit for Ross County. I think no one expects them to take anything from the game. They know themselves to be judged on the games they play against the teams around them. So they'll go out to make life as difficult as possible for Celtic and see if they can find some joy from set pieces or counter attacks. And I think at times Celtic have struggled in games like that this season. I think there seems to be a differentiation. If they get an early goal, sometimes it settles them and they go on to open teams up. I think sometimes when the early goal isn't forthcoming, it gets a bit more staid.
Who do you play up front, Alison, in this one then? Do you go with the same as they did on Sunday with Turnbull leading the line and Rogic behind him? Or would you try and do something different?
I think it's hard because there are so few options really available to you. I'm curious about James Forrest and whether or not he's fit enough to play. I'm sure there'll be an update at some point today. I might have been tempted to play Forrest through the middle as he's done before, or I think it would be possible to play Mikey Johnson through the middle. I thought the front three at the weekend almost rotated. That when they started the game, it seemed to be a variation in who was taking responsibility and taking the lead until Forrest went off. I think it is a headache. I don't think you can shy away from that. And I think it's when players like Turnbull and Rogic and Callum McGregor, players who are capable of offering some creative news, if you want, from the middle of the pitch, I think it's when you need them to come to the fore. I think you saw it at the weekend, just a kind of well-worked goal between Turnbull and Rogic, but it might come down to that again, just being clever at a set piece and also taking chances as and when they come, because I think it could have been far more comfortable at the weekend had Celtic taken some of the chances, especially that sort of 15-20 minute period at the beginning of the second half.
Yep. Now, Tom Rogic scored on Sunday, the match winner. He's just playing some stuff at the minute, isn't he? You wrote a piece also saying that whilst Tom might be at the height of his powers, Callum McGregor's still your man, Alison, isn't he? Orchestrating things in the midfield.
I think Callum McGregor's probably the best midfielder in the country at the minute. I think he's had an outstanding season. I think he's settled into the captaincy well. I think he's shown responsibility on the pitch. He's a quiet captain. He's different from what Scott Brown would have offered. I think he's very much his own man. I think his performances have been exemplary this season. I think he's really dragged Celtic through some games. And I think Celtic will need him now, between now and the end of the month. I think reinforcements will come in January. I think the squad will be strengthened and there'll be greater depth, and obviously there'll be players coming back. I think you have to have some sympathy for Ange Postecoglou, because I don't think at any point this season he's had a full quota of players available to him from the pool that he has.
Take some comments now about Ross County, and regular commenter Frank Brennan. Morning, Frank, how are you doing? Little Ross County will be going out for a point tomorrow night, and so we will yet again have the thrilling task of breaking down 2 banks of 5. I believe that'll probably be true. David Bradley, morning David. I think we pressed Ross County hard from the start. We will beat them easy. All about the press for me. Kyogo. Don't like Dingwall, says Kyogo Ninja Striker Furuhashi. So there you go. That's fair enough. Ewan Boy Martin says a goal fest tomorrow evening. Lots of people confident about going up there and winning, Alison.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the comment about the press is interesting. I think Celtic can wear teams down playing like that. I think you can tire teams out at times, because Celtic, when you've seen it click, they can be difficult to live with in that vein of form. But I do think they are weakened considerably when you take Jota and you take Kyogo out of it. I do think they're a different team. I think both of them have been so fundamental to the pace with which Celtic have played, and I think Kyogo's movement, I think, is just a nightmare for defenders to cope with, and linesmen too, I think. But I just think Celtic miss both of them when they're not there, and I think this is when you need a team performance. It's when you need player. It's almost about a will to win and finding a way to win. I do think it's a different game if Celtic score early. I think it opens the game up much more. I think if the goal comes in the opening stages of the game, it has the potential to be more comfortable.
When Mark Ayres comes in with a left field shout, could I get a happy birthday shout out, please, for today? Well, duly obliged, Mark. Happy birthday to you. Hope you have a great day.
Happy birthday, Mark.
Frank Brennan comes back in. It's not all about the so-called press, but instead it's always having to get that early goal. When we don't get it, the opposition become emboldened and we revert to crab ball in our own half. And I know exactly what he's meaning there. Andrew Gallia comes in. Ralston should play striker. He's played everywhere else, so I wouldn't. It wouldn't worry me if he did play him striker. Michael Quinn comes in. Good morning. We keep winning. That's all we need to do against the odds. I agree with that. We've spoken about that, Alison. Just that need to find a way to win. Nothing but 3 points will do. From Neil Duffy. And Frank Brennan comes back in. I think he likes that word. Definitely stodgy, to put it mildly, Alison. And David Bradley comes in and says, this is a game where we need Rogic to do his stuff. I believe those are the kind of players that you need to step up to the plate on a night like that, isn't it, Alison?
Yeah, and I think you've seen it from Rogic time and time again over the years he's been at Celtic. I think you have seen it repeatedly, just someone with the vision, the intelligence and the ability to craft something out of nothing almost at times. Again, I think Turnbull too. I think all creative players, all middle to front players have a role to play in games like this. I think you know what kind of game you're going to get going up to the final. I don't think there'll be any surprise in how they line up. I don't think there'll be anything that takes Celtic aback. I think you know exactly what you're walking into. I think regardless of the fact that Celtic are without key players, and they are big players and they are big losses, but regardless of that, I think when you compare the resources of both teams, Celtic ought to have enough to go and win the game and bank the points. It's obviously, that's a very simplistic take on it, but I think when you compare the squads, that Celtic should be going and winning in Dingwall.
Alex Shinner comes in. Chances will be created. Defence will do well just to step up and score the goals. It seems every match the comments are we could have scored 5 or 6. Agree with that. They were negligent Sunday with the chances. Jim Stevenson says cannot afford to drop any points before the Rangers game. I think that's what we're alluding to here. And John Curry comes in and says I would try a Abada through the middle instead of Turnbull. Now that's been mooted before. Firstly by Sean, and we've spoken about that at length. It is another chance, isn't it, or another permutation that Ange could maybe think about?
Yeah, funnily enough, I thought about that. I think Abada showed a clear eye for goal when he first came in. I think at the opening weeks of the campaign, he started particularly well. Showed he could finish. It's definitely a consideration, I think. I'm fairly sure that the manager will have given it ample thought over the last week, really, because I think it became very obvious on Thursday night that this was an issue that you had to face. And I think it's not just for Wednesday night. I think I'd be amazed to see Keogh go back in for the League Cup final at the weekend. I don't know if there would be any sense in risking him ahead of the Rangers game at New Year. I think he would probably be unwise to risk a hamstring injury, knowing that he could then be out for up to 6 weeks if it was to be if he to do further damage to it. So I think it's about coming up with a system and personnel that you think can go and score goals over the next few weeks, really, and compensating for the loss of the players that are out.
Will McMillan comes in and says, unlike last season, we aren't changing the formation every week, just personnel, and the system seems to be working. I mean, that's a fair point that he's making there. Whatever Ange does try, it's working just now. They are still winning football matches, Alison, regardless of who's playing.
Yeah, and I think at times they've been grinding it out sometimes, and I think it's been tenuous. I think the games against Hearts and the game against Motherwell, I think, are maybe more nervous than they needed to have been. I think if they were a bit more clinical in front of goal, I think they could have been out of sight in them. But I think 1-0 always lends an air attention to the last 10, 15 minutes of a game, particularly when you know what the gap is and the fact that you can ill afford to fall further behind. I think it just adds an extra layer of pressure to games. And I do think at times Celtic have been guilty of creating chances and not finishing. I think it is a consideration. I think the fact that the sort of players that the manager has been linked with in the January window tells you that, it's something that's crossed his mind too.
Well, he made a point of mentioning the fact that they weren't as clinical as they could have been in the after-match comments on Sunday, looking for that ruthless killer touch. David Bradley comes in and says he thinks that Scales should be a starter soon. I've got to admit, I've been pretty impressed with Scales in the little I've seen of him. Came on at Tannadick, scored a nice goal, and he played very well against Betis in that match. That's another option that Ange clearly has as well at his disposal, Alison.
Yeah, I think all you could say about Boy is that when he's been given a chance, he's looked hungry, he's looked keen to take it, he's looked ready to walk into the first team and make an impact. I think it is a consideration. I think it's another option, and I certainly think he looks like a player who's eager and who is maybe aware that chances might not come around too often, and if he gets it, he has to take it.
Indeed. Now, looking further ahead, Alison, the draw for the Europa Conference League was made yesterday. Celtic have drawn FK Bodo Glimt of Norway in the playoff round, and if they get through that, they'll go into the last 16 of the Europa Conference League. Now, I've written a wee historical bump, if you know your history type bump, saying, can Celtic win the Europa Conference League? And I've said yes, and I've said because in inaugural tournaments, Celtic have actually got a good record dating back to 19 Canteen. I was basing it in historical facts. But there's a wee air of confidence about the Celtic supporters about how their chances are in this. But I don't think Bodo Glimt will be a pushover.
No, I think you would have to temper it by looking at some of the teams that are still in the tournament. I think, there's a few big scalps still in it. I don't think there will be pushovers at all. I think that winning the Norwegian League, the Celtic's only hope is that, not only hope, but something that might strengthen their hand is the fact that the Norwegian League closes now, it shuts down, obviously plays to a different calendar, so Celtic might catch them just as they're coming back into a fresh season. But I think, when you look at what they've done, you look at the results they had against Roma, I think that they won 6-1 and then drew over there, 2-each draw over there, so they're no mugs. And I think they might not have the same reputation as a Rosenborg or something, but the fact that they won the Norwegian League, I'd say it'd be a league that would be fairly comparable with the Scottish League, would suggest that they're no mugs.
It's also in February, Alison, and Celtic might be drastically changed by then as well, with personnel coming in and stuff like that. So Celtic will no doubt be a stronger outfit as well, won't they?
I think you would anticipate that there will be players who are ready to come in and make an impact at first team level in January. I think that everything that Ange Postecoglou has said in recent weeks and recent months points to the fact that he knows the areas he wishes to strengthen and he knows the personnel that he wishes to do. So I think he's been fairly open about returning to the J League, where he knows the players, he knows the league. He obviously knows his own squad now here and knows what he needs to, in terms of implementing the philosophy that he wants to continue with, and players who can come in and seamlessly be a part of that.
Michael Deeney says, we should not fear anybody, they should fear Celtic. That's a fair shout. Frank Brennan comes in and says, Tony has breakfasted on the Oxford English Dictionary with his use of inaugural. We like a word of the day, Alison, don't we? Inaugural seems to be that word. And then Brian Robertson's in. Good job. At least the weather will be the same as here.
Cold.
And Will McMillan says Bodo looks a decent draw. And John Curry says winning the SPFL is crucial this year. The Conference League's a sideshow and potential additional source of injuries. I get all that, but whilst you're fighting in all tournaments, then your objective is to win them, Alison, if you can.
Of course, I actually, I take the point about injuries and whatnot, but I do think it adds a different dimension to your season. I don't think it's a tournament you would have ambitions of being in. I think Celtic would have wished to stay at best in the Europa League and go through into the knockout phases, obviously. But I take the point absolutely about the priority being winning the league, because we know that this season it will come. In all likelihood, it's going to open the door to the group stages of the Champions League, which is huge for Celtic. And that won't be sustained. That will be an isolated season. So I think you definitely want to be there and taking it rather than having to go through the qualifiers again, because we know how difficult that is. It was 4 years since Celtic have been able to negotiate them successfully, 5 years. So I think the reward of winning the league, not just for winning the title in its own right, but for what it gives rise to in terms of European football next season, I think it's absolutely massive.
Yeah, Mo 50s AK boy comes in and says, excellent piece, Tony, thanks very much. Bodo, believe they play in a plastic pitch, not our favourite. Yep, Celtic usually struggle in plastic pitches, Alison, so, and Will McMillan comes in, tongue-in-cheek here, we're the only team that can win a quadruple. he's having a laugh there, I think. But certainly they're still in 4 competitions, so they're fighting on all fronts. They're in a final already. If you say, I think the league is the priority, but you're in it to win it, and you have to go, as you say, the Europa Conference, maybe not what they wanted, but they're in it now, so take what you can from it.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just about trying to go as deep into the tournament as you can. It offers experience to the squad ahead of further European football, hopefully next season, and I think it's something that the manager would welcome. I think it's an opportunity to go and play games at that level, which could enhance some of the players who maybe don't have a huge amount of experience in that arena.
And Andy's made a point of saying he wants to test himself against the best. And I know the Europa Conference League might not be the best that European football has to offer, but you said there are still some big scalps in there to claim if you can get to the latter stages of that tournament.
Yeah, there are, and I think if you come up against a name, you come up against a Spurs or whatever, I think it adds an element of intrigue, of glamour. If you have a Battle of Britain or something like that, I think it does offer a different addendum to the campaign.
Leicester, would you welcome Brendan Rodgers back to Celtic Park? Would he want that? Would the Celtic fans want that? Is that something that would whet the appetite, certainly?
It would be interesting, that for sure. I think Brendan made it fairly clear that he wasn't the biggest fan of the Conference League, but that it would be an intriguing one.
Yeah, AGSC Tech comes in and says, can't believe how disrespectful Rodgers was about the Conference League. Was a Cup Winners' Cup invalid then? Making your point there. Yeah, he was a wee bit disparaging about it, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think just in the immediate aftermath of the game and the result, I think just catching him in a raw moment. I
wonder if he would play a weakened team then, Alison, if they did draw Celtic at Celtic Park in the Europa Conference League. Might change his tune then, eh?
Yeah, I think we'll wait and put that under the bracket of when and if.
Yeah, and Frank Brennan comes in and says Brendan Rodgers would always be welcome at Celtic Park. I have the same feeling as that, Frank. I think he would always be welcome at Celtic Park. And on that note, we shall see what happens tomorrow night in Dingwall. And we'll obviously preview that again tomorrow too, in a bit more depth. But we hope you have a happy Tuesday. I'm away to say happy 2nd anniversary to the wife, even though she's been locked in this room and other rooms with me for the best part of 2 years. But there you go. Alison, I hope you have a wonderful day. And thanks everybody for your contributions. We really appreciate it. And cheers for your contribution, Alison.
Thank you.